Hello, welcome back to Men Cinema. It's October, it's spooky season, and we're going to be looking at spooky films. So, before we get started, if you can please hit the like button, the little thumbs up thing that's down below, if you can hit that, that'd be great. If you could subscribe to the channel, and if you hit the notification bell, that'll be absolutely fantastic. All that does is it spreads awareness of these videos, lets everybody else know that you've liked it, and other people can come along and say, hey, they liked it, so maybe I'll like it. And that'll be absolutely fantastic. It just helps me along a little bit, if you can do that. Magic. Right, so as I say, looking at spooky films. Now, a number of my friends have asked me in the past, how do you introduce children into the horror genre? And of course, I'm not talking about dropping them in the deep end. I'm not talking about, showing them the latest Saw movie or the latest Terrifier movie and stuff like that. What I'm talking about is easing them in slowly. Now, the way that I was introduced to horror movies is the same as probably most kids. I was watching Scooby-Doo. Of course, Scooby-Doo, you've got these absolutely lovable characters. You've got Fred, you've got Daphne, Shaggy, Velma, and of course Scooby-Doo himself. And the point of Scooby-Doo is to show that monsters sometimes are just human underneath. And I think that's quite calming and relaxing for children, so they can see something scary and then they rip the mask off and say, see, it's not as bad after all. And I think that's a good way. It's a good introduction to the horror genre, if you like, by watching Scooby-Doo. And of course they're classics. They're on all the time. If you've got one of those cartoon channels, Scooby-Doo is on practically every day, so you could always catch up with Scooby-Doo. Other films that children might like to start off with, featuring monsters, but a nice, calm, lovable stories. You've got Hotel Transylvania series, which I've really enjoyed. I know I'm old, but I enjoy the Hotel Transylvania movies. They're good fun. You've got some lovable characters in there. You see people like Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman and the Mummy, and they're all introduced in these movies, but in a lovable way. So when the children see them later on in life, they'll be able to identify them, but see different character traits in them. So yeah, Hotel Transylvania, another all-time classic which I absolutely love and I recommend that children of all ages watch, is The Nightmare Before Christmas. You've got Jack Skellington. He's a nice, gentle soul. He might be a scary skeleton. He lives in a scary village with other scary creatures. But all he wants to do is have a go at another holiday. He wants to learn about Christmas and bring the Christmas holiday back to Halloween Town and try it out there. And of course things go a little bit awry and Jack realises that he's got to live in Halloween Town and do his own thing, which he's good at, rather than take over Christmas. But it's a really good film. It's got some lovely songs in it, a lovely mood. The animation is fantastic. And I truly recommend you watch Nightmare Before Christmas. It's a good way to ease the children into the horror genre again, get them used to spooky looking characters. Of course, there's a number of TV shows as well which you can move them on. Once you've moved on from those gentler kind of movies, you can move them up a step. And the next step is to watch things like Goosebumps on the television, little scary stories, or even Goosebumps movie, which had Jack Black in it. I thought those were really good, especially the one which was Haunted Halloween, which was the second one. Of course, you can look at classic episodes on TV of the monsters. Don't go near the Rob Zombie version, because the Rob Zombie version will probably be terrifying to anybody, really. But yeah, I would work with the old Herman Munster, Lily Munster and that kind of thing with the Dracula. The black and white episodes, they're good fun, again, getting children used to seeing these monsters on the screen before you move on to the next stage. And of course, the next stage will be the Universal Classic Monsters. Now, if you don't want to dive right into the Universal Classic Monsters, what I recommend you do is go for the Abbott and Costello movies. Now, the Abbott and Costello, of course, they're famous comedians from back in the day. And, of course, they mock the monsters and play around with the monster theme. And it's not as hard, if you like, as the Universal Monsters are. But Abbott and Costello is funny. He does a lot of screeching and hello and all that kind of business. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, I think was one of the titles, is a good one to watch because you get a number of monsters in there actually played by some of the actors who played them in the Universal Monsters series. I think you've got Lon Chaney Jr. playing the Wolfman. So yeah, Abbott and Costello first of all, and then once you've seen the Abbott and Costello movies, I would move on to the Universal Monster movies. You can start them with something tame like Frankenstein. They would have got used to seeing him in things like I say, the Monsters, if you like, and also in the Scooby-Doo and things like that. And then you can move on to Frankenstein, Dracula. They might actually find The Invisible Man funny. The Invisible Man, I find, is a really funny film. It's a little bit dark if you're older, if you're watching. There's some darker themes in it. But yeah, The Invisible Man, the black and white version, is with Claude Rains, of course, is fantastic. It's a really good movie. So yeah, move on from Abbott and Costello, ease your way all the way through the Universal Monsters movie. There is a lovely box set that's available if you can find it on Blu-ray or DVD. Universal Monsters box set, watch all of those, ease your way through those, that would be great. So the next step could go one of two ways. Now, what you could do is you could move on from the Universal Monsters movies onto things like Psycho and The Haunting, but I think maybe moving on from Universal Monsters to those might be a little bit too heavy. They may not want to watch more black and white movies. Of course, you can go for some of the monster movies like Them or The Thing, the original The Thing, obviously not the John Carpenter version at this stage. But if you want to move over from sci-fi, horror and black and white movies, the next natural step would be the Hammer movies. Now, the Hammer movies, you've got to be a little bit careful with. I would obviously look for older children with this one. I would wait until you're about, I don't know, 14, 15 before you put them in front of Hammer movies. Hammer movies did have lots of gory blood, little bits of nudity here and there. But in the overall scheme of things, they're still quite tame. You can also watch the Amicus movies, which are the compilation stories, which are really good. So I would say that the Hammer movies might be the next natural progression on from the Universal Monsters. And of course, then if they want to go back and look at Psycho and The Haunting and stuff like that, if they're into their more serious kind of horror movies, that would be great. Once you've done Hammer, of course, the teens will be coming along. I'm talking about teenagers. We're talking about... they'll be wanting to look at some of the classic monsters of my era. Of course, we're talking about Big Mike over here. Michael Myers, and of course Jason, Freddy, Chucky, those kind of movies. Now, back in the day, they were seen as quite hardcore, quite violent. I know that I was told off a number of times for watching the Jason and the Halloween movies. But I think by today's standards, they're all right. So I think you'll look at around 15, 16 before you introduce people into the Friday the 13th, like I say, the Nightmare on Elm Street, the Halloween movies. In particular, I would start with the original Halloween. It's quite a bloodless affair, really. It's just suspenseful and just scary. So I would actually start with the original John Carpenter's Halloween, and then you could move on to Halloween 2, which is a little bit gorier, but it's not too bad. Friday the 13th tends to be a lot bloodier. Nightmare on Elm Street's a little bit fantasy-wise, so that's not super bad. So I would move on from those once you've done the Hammer movies. Of course, pretty much once they've got to that stage, they'll be old enough to choose their horror movies for themselves. I know I mentioned those movies about 12 or 15 years old, and yes, I know that the proper rating for these Halloween and Friday the 13th movies back day, the earlier ones in particular, were 18. But I think kids, if you were to re-rate them nowadays, those movies will be at 15. Kids can cope with a lot more nowadays. So I would say, yeah. Once you've moved on from the Jason, the Freddys and all that business, they'll find their own way. I think they'll find their own path into horror movies, and you should be quite well set. But yeah, right back in the early days, right back in the beginning, if you want to kind of let your kids love monsters as much as you love monsters, Scooby-Doo is the way to go. Scooby-Doo, Hotel Transylvania, Nightmare Before Christmas. That's your gateway into horror movies. Of course, monitor children all the way along. Don't let them watch anything they're not prepared for. Certainly don't let them watch movies like Terrifier, which is, I mean, even for my age, Terrifier can be a little bit gross. You think, oh my god, how did they do that, or why did they do that? So things like that, just be cautious of what they're watching. Always keep not an evil eye, but keep an eye on them, and make sure they're not watching anything too bad. But yeah, I think what I've described to you is a nice path into watching horror movies as they grow older, and of course start with Scooby-Doo. If you've enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Give it the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. We'll be back with more horror-themed, spooky-themed videos over the course of October. I'll do as many as I can. I'm very busy in October, but I'll do as many as I can for you. But I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope it's given you a kind of an idea of how to ease children into watching horror movies. And I hope you've enjoyed what I've had to say and my recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. I'll speak to you all again soon.